In the latest Nintendo Direct, Nintendo showed off a ton of Pikmin 3, as well as providing some additional information on it. So we're going to do what we do best, and that's analyze the footage to see what secrets it might be hiding. But please make sure to check out our previous analysis videos if you haven't already, as we'll be referring to them throughout the video. So the new footage opens up with an up-close look at the three characters you'll be playing as: Alf, Brittany, and Charlie. But hold on just a second. At last year's E3, Nintendo announced there would actually be 4 playable characters: A, B, C, and D. And aside from the new names, A, B, and C appear mostly unchanged, so it looks like poor D didn't make the cut. And it seems unlikely he'll pop up as a 4th leader later, seeing as how the screen for the ship's log only has 3 captain slots. Of course, it's possible he could pop up as some other kind of role, perhaps back on their home planet. As for the renamed characters, you may have noticed that their names all start with the same letter now as they did at last year's E3, so A became Alf, B became Brittany, and C Charlie. But did you notice their new names are also extremely similar to the first 3 letters of the NATO phonetic alphabet? Which was a system developed in the 1950s to ensure there was no confusion when speaking letters over the phone or radio, and is still used today by the army. So according to that alphabet, the letter A would be Alpha, which is pretty damn close to Alf. And C would become Charlie, which is exactly the name of the captain here. And B would be Bravo, which makes Brittany the odd one out, and that her name would be the furthest from the native phonetic alphabet. But hey, they both still start with BR, so it's close enough. So that's just a cool little touch that's easily missed. Oh, and if the D character is still in the game, we might expect him to be named something close to Delta by that same standard. Okay, that's enough name talk. It's not like we're picking up baby names here. But let's talk a little bit more about those 3 characters, which Iwata noted are from the planet Hawktai, which is facing a major food shortage. Because of that, the 3 set out on a voyage into space in search of food. But like in Pikmin 1, they had some kind of mishap and end up crash landing on a strange planet, which of course is full of Pikmin. And it looks like all 3 characters are separated in the process. Now Pikmin 2 actually did something similar at the start of the game, where both of the playable characters landed in different areas of the same level, but end up regrouping by the end of the first day. But this time, it seems at least 2 of them would be starting off in entirely different levels, as we can see Alf lands in a pleasant spring-like area, whereas Charlie has the misfortune of landing in an area covered entirely by snow. Unfortunately, the trailer doesn't explicitly reveal where Brittany ends up, but we do have some idea of when she shows up. If we take a look at the ship's log screen again, we can see that the second day is titled Where's Brittany, which could mean a few things. For one, it seems pretty clear that you'll probably start the game as Alf, seeing as he's the only character displayed on the same screen for day 2. This also suggests it'll be impossible to find Brittany on day 1. As the first day in both of the previous Pikmin games are basically highly structured tutorials, which means the player here would have had to have found her on day 1 if it were possible. In fact, we can see that she doesn't show up in one of the ship's log's character slots until day 4, which means that Alpha found her in day 3 in this case. Though in one of the clips you can actually see her out in the field on day 2, so you might be able to regroup with her as early as on the second day. Which means it's likely that she actually does crash land in the same level as Alf. Now, as you may have noticed, Charlie hasn't appeared in the ship's log at all, suggesting you won't regroup with him until later in the game. While we're on the ship's log, it also confirms the order in which you'll find at least 2 types of Pikmin. Not surprisingly, it seems you'll be finding the red ones first, which we also got to see in this clip. And it looks like the rock Pikmin will show up next, with you being able to find them as soon as on day 2. Now, although none of the other Pikmin appear on this screen, we can see that in one of the other clips that Charlie actually might be the first to encounter the yellow ones. But hold up, if we look at the day counter in the top right corner, we can see that he actually encounters them on day 1. What the heck? How is it possible that you're playing as the captain on day 1 when it seems he doesn't regroup with the others until much later? Especially because another clip confirms you'll also be playing as Alf on day 1. Maybe you can actually choose who you start as on the first day. Or maybe you actually switch between the characters even though they're apparently not in the same level, although we think this is a pretty big stretch. It's also possible that day 1 is unique and that you might actually control all 3 characters, perhaps helping the others get to a safe place until Alf can reunite them. This might also make sense considering day 1's normally a tutorial level anyway, so why not get all 3 characters in on the action? And since we already know that Alf will be encountering the red Pikmin and Charlie the yellow, this might mean that Brittany will be handling the blue ones. Now let's look a little more at Alf's day 1 footage. Like in past games, it seems he'll start with a small group of red Pikmin, but he's going to need 16 more if he wants to move that cardboard box there, which looks like it requires 20. Fortunately, he can of course increase their numbers by taking the pellets found in the flowers back to the onion. But in order to make use of those pellets, he'll first have to find the onion, which is basically the Pikmin's portable home. Now in previous games, you would come across the onion just lying there on the ground, but this time it seems to be growing as part of a plant that you'll first have to knock loose by throwing Pikmin at it. But once he has, we can see that it looks pretty different from the onions in past games, such as how it changes to a bright red color upon dropping to the ground. And in another clip which shows the onion fully operational, it actually appears to be 2 colors, gray and red. Yep, you guessed it, the same 2 colors of the 2 Pikmin types currently in your possession, being of course the red and the gray rock Pikmin. And in yet another scene, we can see that's red and yellow, reflecting the red and yellow Pikmin in your control. Although there are rock Pikmin here too, and the onion isn't gray, so maybe it actually cycles between colors. Basically, between this and the fact that we only ever see a single onion, it seems all Pikmin will now share the same home, instead of having a different onion for each color. And while we're talking about things that have changed, look at your ship! It looks substantially different from the ones in past games, which makes sense given that your characters are from a completely different planet than the captains of previous games. In addition, if we go back to that first Onion clip, we can see that Alf actually talks during the game itself. This might suggest a stronger focus on this story. Maybe your characters actually talk to each other throughout the game. And speaking of the characters, we can see that they function very similarly to the pair in Pikmin 2. Once you regroup with them, you can switch between them at will to manage different Pikmin groups all over the map, and it seems they'll each have their own set of health too, just like in Pikmin 2. But now they can actually travel by themselves to where you need them, simply by tapping a location on the map displayed on the gamepad. In fact, the gamepad appears to play a large role in the game, so much so that it's actually been given its own in-game name, the Copad. Primarily, it displays a perpetual map that can easily scroll around by dragging your finger, which displays the areas of the map you've explored as well as important things like your teammate and Pikmin locations. In addition, we can see it has a few other functions too. Of course, there's a compass in the top left corner, but there appear to be 5 buttons below too. The planet-shaped one, we're guessing, takes you to the map. Similarly, the camera on the far right likely activates the camera mode that Iwata's talked about before, where you can snap pictures and share them on Miiverse. Okay, so those two were easy, but what about the Pikmin icon? We think it might bring up a stat screen with all the relevant information on your Pikmin, such as how many you have in total and how many are out in the field, broken down by color. Then there's a fruit button, which we're guessing displays all the fruits you found, similar to the treasure screen from past games. And finally, we have this odd yellow icon, which looks like a page. What could this be about? As it turns out, the same icon actually also appears in the world itself, just behind the glass wall in this clip. We think its page-like icon might mean it's an information spot, so when you touch it on the world map, that info will be transferred to your Copad for review. And speaking of keeping track of things, Iwata confirmed that the 30-day time limit for Pikmin 1 won't be returning, but that doesn't mean it'll be nearly as leisurely as in Pikmin 2. And that's because there still is a time limit, sort of. Now we already know your goal is to find food, specifically fruits like the strawberries, pears, cherries, and oranges shown in the trailer. But why fruits? So you can take their seeds back to your home planet to plant them, silly. But that doesn't mean the rest of the fruit goes to waste, as you'll be able to convert it into juice to use it as food to feed your 3 characters. Because if you don't keep them adequately fed, you won't be able to complete your mission. So even though there's no hard time limit like Pikmin 1 per se, there's still a soft one that you'll have to actively work at to keep at bay. Now Iwata was a little vague on the exact details of this mechanic, but we think we have some idea of how it works. In the footage, we can see that a strawberry, or a sunseed berry as the game calls it, is enough to fill 1 entire bottle. And if you look close, the bottle appears to have a number 3 on it, which might suggest it's good for 3 servings, or 1 for each character. And based on what Brittany says here, it appears you'll be eating at the end of each day, and by the looks of it, 1 daily serving might be all you need. So basically, it seems each fruit will buy you an extra day. And assuming that's the case, that might mean the player here only has 2 days left before they run out of food. Which means it's probably going to be a constant struggle to find food fast enough to ensure you don't run out. So much so that there's a constant reminder of how many juice bottles you have left as you play through the game, displayed right below the day counter. Now you might have noticed that the juices collected by the player so far are all different colors, which makes sense if the juice will match the color of the fruit it came from. In which case, the orange juice probably came from an orange, whereas yellow could be from a banana or a lemon, and the blue one could be from a grape or an eggplant, among other possible things. But we can't help but wonder that different juices might have different effects too, sort of like a power-up or something. So what happens if you run out of juice? According to Iwata, you won't be able to continue your game, which is where the game's ship log comes into play. The ship log allows you to restart from apparently any of the days you've already played, which is a feature that returns from the Wii version of Pikmin. And it seems you'll be able to access the ship log at any point from the pause screen, though you can also choose to immediately restart the day you're currently on, or just end that day prematurely if you want to switch levels. Now there are a few other details about the ship log I wanted to point out. As we've mentioned before, it seems each day will be named, which at first seems a little odd because Pikmin's not really a linear game. After all, how could each day have a set name if you're free to pursue whatever objectives you want? But we think we have a couple possible explanations. For one, if the names are generated automatically, they're probably given after the fact, based on what you accomplished in that day, which would be similar to the Captain's Log in Pikmin 1, where Captain Olimar provided a recap of the day's events, only now in shorter form. Though our second idea is that maybe you can actually name each day yourself. It will certainly help you remember what happened in each one. Either way, both ideas are supported by the fact that day 4 here, which we're guessing is the current day, doesn't have a name yet, which means they're only given a name after you finish them. Alright, it's time to move on to the actual gameplay itself. First off, we can see that a lot of elements return from the previous games. For one, we can see that some flower pellets still cycle through colors before you knock them down. And since one of those colors is gray, this confirms that rock Pikmin will indeed be getting their own pellets too. Speaking of flowers, if we look at the bottom right corner in this scene, we can see that the burgeoning spiderwort flowers from Pikmin 2 return, which as you may remember, provided the berries used to create the sprays that can power up your Pikmin, suggesting those two are back. And the electric gates appear to be back as well, which means that yellow Pikmin are likely still the only ones immune to these, though they do look a little bit different this time. And in another scene, we can actually see a similar gate that's apparently been disabled. And while we're talking about gates, if we pause the scene just as the camera starts moving, we can see what appears to be a stone gate, similar to the ones in Pikmin 1. Now in that game, you had to use bomb rocks to take them out. So if these walls function the same way, that might mean the bomb rocks are back too. Then there's a geyser returning from Pikmin 1 that allows access to out-of-reach areas. And in this clip, we can see what appears to be another geyser, although there's no water, and it looks slightly different from the first one. This might actually be a cave entrance returning from Pikmin 2. Oh, and if you take a look at the map here, that sure does look like a cave that the character's walking to, doesn't it? It's hard to tell if we're right, since there's no interior footage of the caves in this footage, but as you might recall, a very cave-like looking sequence appeared in December's Nintendo Direct. So this does indeed mean caves are back, we don't know if they function the same way. That is, are they still randomly generated? And does time stop when you're inside them? We don't know, but based on this clip, it sure looks like they're a lot bigger and more open than before. Moving on, we get to see some more returning enemies as well, such as the burrowing snagrets, fiery blowhogs, wollywogs, wogpoles, dwarf bulborbs, and armored cannon beetles. Which, by the way, the rock Pikmin seem to be mostly immune to, as they simply get buried by the rocks instead of taken out completely. But it's not just returning enemies we get to look at. Take the pyroplasmic slooches here that we've seen in previous footage. And then we also have two more enemies we've never seen before. If we zoom in on the top left corner of this clip, we can see a purple enemy spring up out of the water. Then if we pause the geyser clip here, we can see a pair of odd, almost skeletal looking enemies. Now beyond the enemies, there are a few new environmental things I wanted to point out. For one, it appears to be raining in this scene, and because it's only day 3, we're guessing this is the same area as many of the other scenes from the trailer, which didn't feature any rain at all. So maybe the weather might actually change in some of the levels now, which would be a pretty big addition to the series. More importantly, there's a freaking slide in the snow level. Whee! And then we get another look at the glass gate, which only rock Pikmin can break through. Now let's talk about the user interface a bit. It appears that the cursor now changes color to reflect which Pikmin type you have selected, which should make it a little clearer who's next in line. And there's also now a number next to your cursor which displays the amount of Pikmin of that color currently in your possession. Now if you played the original games, you might remember how much of a pain it was to keep track of the Pikmin colors you were throwing, since the game could only display the color of the next immediate Pikmin, which wasn't of much help when you were throwing them too fast to react. But this time, the game actually displays the order that the next 3 color groups would be thrown in. So in this case, it's showing that once you've exhausted your yellows, the blues are up next, followed by reds. And any teammates in your possession can appear here too, as they can now be thrown too, as seen in previous footage. Oh, and in case you're wondering why those icons are crossed out occasionally, it likely just means that a particular Pikmin group isn't available, either due to being too far away or incapacitated, as is the case here. Along those same lines, if you check out this clip, did you notice how the Pikmin now warp from the group to Olimar's hands when he's throwing them? Although it may not look quite as smooth as previous Pikmin games where the Pikmin dynamically rearrange themselves, it should help make it clear how many Pikmin of each type you have left without them moving around constantly. Speaking of Pikmin numbers, we notice the game now sometimes displays the amount of Pikmin of the selected color left in the field who aren't currently under your control, although it only appears in this one scene. So we're guessing this only happens toward the end of each day when you need to hurry up and retrieve your Pikmin before night falls. Finally, the same sun meter that measures the time at the top of the screen, as well as a 10-second countdown at the end of each day, both return. And by the way, all of the interface elements that appear in the game's world itself, such as the cursor or any numbers that appear out on the field, all appear to be holographic, as if being projected, which is a really cool touch. Now once you actually finish a level, you're able to watch a replay of the action on the gamepad while the TV displays the stats of what's happening, and it appears you'll be able to watch the footage at either 5 times or 10 times the speed. And if we take another look at the ship's log, we can see it reveals a few final details. Of course, it shows how many fruits you found and the amount of juice you have, but it also shows the amount of each type of Pikmin, as well as the amount of Pikmin you've lost. But as you might have noticed, there are only slots for 5 Pikmin types, even though there are 7 types total: red, blue, yellow, rock, winged, and purple and white. And we're guessing the 2 that got the shaft are the purple and white ones, which means they're once again not primary Pikmin types. So it seems that, like before, you won't be able to grow them, and instead can only transform existing ones into them, perhaps by way of the same flowers from Pikmin 2. And in Pikmin 2, those types actually lived in the ship instead of the onion. But seeing as the ship here doesn't have a holographic display in which to interact with it, we're guessing they might actually live in the onion this time. Okay, we're nearly done here, but as usual, there's still just a few final details left. First up, did you notice all the Pikmin glow and sparkle when being thrown? Could this mean they're stronger while flying through the air? It sure looks that way by this poor dwarf bulborb who gets flattened by a few of them. Next, we actually get to see the winged Pikmin side by side with the non-winged ones for the first time, and it looks like they'll travel just like the group does, only overhead. And in case you're wondering, it appears you won't actually get your first fruit until day 2, if Alf's text is anything to go by. Finally, in this scene, did you notice there appears to be a face on the side of that hill? But that's not just any face. That's the face of the company president from Pikmin 2. So is this just a cute reference, or might it be a hint that the company president and maybe Olimar might be returning too? And with that, we're done covering everything we could dig up on Pikmin 3. As usual, let us know if we missed anything by posting in the comments. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for more on Pikmin 3 and other things gaming too.